From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Our humanity is not dependent on a piece of paper. We are not documented or undocumented. We are human beings.
That's the voice of Ravi Ragbir, head of the new Sanctuary Coalition of New York City. Last week, he was detained by ICE, jailed in Florida, now faces deportation. Just a week earlier, another leader of the Sanctuary movement, Jean Montreville, was detained, deported to Haiti on Tuesday. Today, we look at how the Trump administration's targeting leaders of the immigrants' rights movement from New York to Seattle, Washington, where a prominent activist, Marumora Villalpando, has also announced she faces possible deportation. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The New York Times reports the Pentagon's proposing widening the permittable use of nuclear weapons to include responding to cyber attacks and other non-nuclear attacks to U.S. infrastructure. The Pentagon's already outlined this expanded nuclear strategy in a draft document sent to President Trump for approval. It comes amidst a series of moves by the Pentagon and President Trump that have escalated the threat of nuclear war. The Wall Street Journal reports the Pentagon's planning to develop 2 new sea-based nuclear weapons. The New York Times also reports the Pentagon's conducting a series of war games to prepare for a potential war with North Korea. This is Secretary of State Rex Tillerson warning Americans about the escalating threat of war with North Korea.
With respect to whether Americans should be concerned about a war with North Korea, I think we all need to be very sober and clear-eyed about the current situation, as North Korea has continued to make significant advances in both its nuclear weapons, the lethality of those weapons, as demonstrated by their last thermonuclear test, as well as the continued progress they've made in their intercontinental ballistic missile systems. We have to recognize that threat is growing. And if North Korea does not choose the pathway of engagement, discussion, negotiation, then they themselves will trigger an option.
On Capitol Hill, the government's again facing the looming possibility of a shutdown, as lawmakers have yet to reach an agreement about immigration protections for 800,000 young undocumented immigrants known as Dreamers. On Tuesday night, Republicans proposed yet another short-term funding stopgap in order to keep the government funded without resolving key legislative issues, including immigration and a children's health program called CHIP. A number of key Democratic senators say they will oppose any funding measures unless there's a resolution on DACA. That's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. The legislative showdown comes as the fight over DACA is also playing out in the courts. On Tuesday, Trump's Justice Department said it would ask the Supreme Court to immediately review a federal judge's recent decision forcing the Trump administration to restart DACA, which Trump attempted to cancel last year. In more news on immigration, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was questioned Tuesday by the Senate Judiciary Committee, during which she denied she heard President Trump refer to Haiti, Salvador, and African countries as S-hole countries. This is Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey.
The commander-in-chief, in an Oval Office meeting, referring to people from African countries and Haitians with the most vile and vulgar language. The language festers. When ignorance and bigotry is allied with power, it is a dangerous force in our country. Your silence and your amnesia is complicity.
During the hearing, Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen also attempted to defend Trump's racist comments that he wants more immigrants from countries like Norway, not the African countries. This is Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont.
What does he mean when he says he wants more immigrants from Norway?
I don't believe he said that specifically. What he was saying was he was using Norway as an example of a country that is what he was specifically referring to is the Prime Minister telling him that the people of Norway work very hard. And so what he was referencing is, from a merit-based perspective, we'd like to have those with skills who can assimilate and contribute to the United States, moving away from country quotas and to an individual merit-based system.
Norway is a predominantly white country, isn't it?
I actually do not know that, sir, but I imagine that is the case.
Okay.
Norway is over 90% white, one of the whitest countries in the world. The New York Times reports Special Counsel Robert Mueller has subpoenaed President Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, to testify before a grand jury as part of the ongoing investigation into whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to sway the 2016 election. The Times reports this is the first known time Mueller's team has used a grand jury subpoena for a member of Trump's inner circle. On Tuesday, Bannon was also subpoenaed by the House Intelligence Committee after he refused to answer a wide range of the committee's questions during a Tuesday hearing. Even after the subpoena was issued, Bannon continued to refuse to answer questions after his lawyers conferred with the White House. This is Democratic Congressmember Adam Schiff, the highest-ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee.
There is, I think, without a doubt, a great deal he could say with respect to many of the allegations and the comments that are attributed to him in the book Fire and Fury. We also have a great many questions, but specifically any communications that he had within the White House at the time the Trump Tower meeting was made public, obviously is of deep interest to us. Whether he was ever given any instructions that he felt might hinder the Russia investigation is of deep interest to us.
White House Dr. Ronnie Johnson said Tuesday President Trump is in good health and displayed a normal score on a cognitive exam amidst mounting questions about President Trump's mental health. This is Dr. Jackson.
I had absolutely no concerns about his cognitive ability or his, his neurological function. So I was not going to do a cognitive exam. I had no intention of doing one. The reason that we did the cognitive assessment is plain and simple because the president asked me to do it. He came to me and he said, is there something we can do, a test or some type of screen that we can do to assess my, my cognitive ability? However, mental health experts say the short 15-minute cognitive screening test administered is not comprehensive, and many are still calling for a full neuropsychiatric evaluation. The Senate moved Tuesday to extend the National Security Agency's warrantless surveillance program for another 6 years. The Senate voted 60-38 to overcome a procedural delay, despite calls by a group of lawmakers who first wanted to vote on a series of amendments that would have imposed more privacy protections. The law, known as Section 702, allows the U.S. government to collect communications, including emails, phone calls, text messages from foreigners, including their communications with U.S. citizens. It can collect all this information without a warrant. The Trump administration's withholding $65 million of funding from the UN humanitarian agency for Palestinians known as UNRWA. That's the UN Relief and Works Agency. UN officials say the slashed funding will devastate its humanitarian programs. This comes as the Israeli military attacked a funeral procession in the West Bank, opening fire on the mourners during clashes after the funeral. The funeral was for 24-year-old Ahmed Salim, who was killed by Israeli troops Monday. The United Nations says at least 5,000 children in Yemen have been killed or maimed since March 2015, when the U.S.-backed Saudi-led coalition intervened in the ongoing conflict, launching a massive bombing campaign and imposing a blockade that's created a widespread shortage of food, water, and medicine in Yemen. The UNICEF report says another 400,000 children in Yemen are severely malnourished. The United States has supported Saudi Arabia in the ongoing war in Yemen by selling the Saudis billions of dollars worth of weapons and providing logistical military support, including critical mid-air refueling to Saudi coalition warplanes. The Justice Department says it's arrested a former CIA agent who is suspected of working with China to systematically dismantle the U.S. spying operations there. The former officer is named Jerry Changxing Li. In recent years, more than a dozen CIA informants have been killed or imprisoned by the Chinese government. In more news on China, pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong has been sentenced to 3 months in prison for his role in organizing the 2014 Umbrella Movement protests in Hong Kong. This is Joshua Wong speaking before his sentencing Wednesday.
They can lock up our body, but they can't lock up our mind. What we hope to do is, even we need to face the prison sentencing, we'll still continue to fight for democracy in the future.
In the Philippines, journalists and press freedom advocates are condemning Duterte's government for trying to shut down the highly popular independent news outlet Rappler. On Monday, the Securities and Exchange Commission revoked Rappler's license to operate on charges that the website's foreign-owned, even though the website is owned by Filipinos. This morning, the Philippines Justice Department authorized the opening of a criminal investigation into the website. Rappler and press freedom advocates say the website's being targeted for its critical reporting on Rodrigo Duterte's administration and his devastating so-called drug war. Back in the United States, the majority of the National Park System Advisory Board has resigned in protest of the fact that Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke has not met with them even once since Trump took office a year ago. The board's chairman, Tony Knowles, a former governor of Alaska, said, quote, "The department showed no interest in learning about or continuing to use the forward-thinking agenda of science when it comes to the effect of climate change, protection of ecosystems, and education," unquote. He was one of 9 members of the 12-person panel who quit on Monday in protest. In California, a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy has been arrested by FBI agents and charged with running a drug trafficking scheme, which included allegedly hiring other police officers to provide physical security for drug dealers. Deputy Kenneth Collins and 3 other men were arrested in the Tuesday morning sting. In Wisconsin, Democrats have won a major victory in a state Senate race, flipping a rural district that's been controlled by Republicans for almost 20 years. Democrat Patty Schachtner defeated State Representative Adam Jarcho in a special election, winning by at least 9 points. In Chile, Pope Francis has apologized for the irreparable damage caused by pre-sexual abuse of children. He said he was pained and ashamed by the abuse. And in Michigan, female gymnasts who survived sexual assault and abuse by former USA gymnastics team Dr. Larry Nassar testified against him on the first day of his sentencing Tuesday. Dr. Nassar has already admitted to sexually abusing the athletes when they were children and adolescents and then covering up the abuse by pretending it was part of a medical treatment. Nearly 140 women have come forward to accuse Nassar of abuse, including exposing himself in front of them, rubbing his genitals against their bodies, penetrating their vaginas with his fingers. Among his accusers are Olympic gymnasts, including the gold medalist Simone Biles. The first woman to testify at Tuesday's hearing was Kyle Stevens, who said Nassar began abusing her when she was only 6 years old. Another woman who testified at Tuesday's hearing was Donna Markham, the mother of former gymnast Chelsea Markham, who was sexually abused by Nassar when she was only 10 years old. Chelsea went on to commit suicide in 2009.
In 2009, she took her own life because she couldn't deal with the pain anymore. It'll be 10 years in March that I lost my baby. She was 23 years old. She would have been 33 now. And every day I miss her. Every day. And it all started with him. It all started with him and just became worse as the years went by until she couldn't deal with it anymore.
Larry Nassar faces decades in prison on charges of sexually assaulting and abusing minors. He's already been sentenced to 60 years in prison after being convicted on child pornography charges in a separate case. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. On Martin Luther King Day here in New York, hundreds gathered to oppose the detention of local activist Ravi Ragbir, who was detained last week when he went to his check-in with ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Ragbir is executive director of the new Sanctuary Coalition of New York City. He helped pioneer the accompaniment program for thousands of others who face similar check-ins. Ravi's detention sparked a peaceful protest that was met with police violence. Police arrested 18 people, including members of the New York City Council. Ravi Ragbir legally immigrated to the United States from Trinidad and Tobago more than 25 years ago, but a 2001 wire fraud conviction made his green card subject to review. Even though he's married to a U.S. citizen and has a U.S.-born daughter, the government refused to normalize his status. Just a week prior, Gene Montreville, another leader with the New Sanctuary Coalition of New York City, was detained outside his home. He was deported to Haiti on Tuesday. Well, on Monday, hundreds circled Washington Square Park in Lower Manhattan in a Jericho walk, then gathered at Judson Memorial Church to show support for Ravi and Gene. Speakers included Rhea Trivedi, a member of Ravi Ragbir's Defense Committee.
This weekend, it was my great privilege to accompany Amy to see Ravi, to update him on all you've been doing, and to hear his jokes about how he's never moved through the TSA as quickly as when he was accompanied by 8 ICE agents. Today, it's my great privilege to share this message from Ravi, this letter from an immigration jail. I'm doing okay. It was a wild and crazy ride. Every moment was uncertain, except the certainty that they wanted me gone. I'm still here because of all of you. Thank you. I miss everyone. I feel very heartbroken to see how many of you are suffering for me, how many people were abused during this process. I feel heartbroken that care for someone evokes violence. I want everyone to stand strong. At this moment, we need to speak about changing this system so that no one has to face this type of harm, not just for me, but for all the families who face being torn apart. Until we get reform, we need to repeal the act that criminalizes immigrants, that makes us less than human because of a document. I call upon immigrants, if you need help, reach out to the New Sanctuary Coalition, and they will fight for you as they do for me. And I call upon citizens to answer the call for immigrants who are afraid and who need help standing up. Please accompany them at every step. I know that I will see you all very soon. Thanks, everybody.
That's Rhea Trivedi, a member of Ravi Ragbir's Defense Committee, speaking on Monday, in New York. She was reading Ravi Ragbir's letter. New York City Council member Jumaane Williams also spoke. Williams was arrested along with fellow City Council member Ydanis Rodriguez and 16 others as they and others attempted to block an ambulance being used to transport Ravi Ragbir to detention last week.
I want to say to those who question myself and Councilmember Ydanis Rodriguez and the others that were arrested with us, who question why we were in the streets, who question why we were blocking a van with people in it. If you come out of a building with no lights and no sirens, you are a van with passengers. If you are questioning what we were doing there on Martin Luther King Day, please shut your mouth. Don't let that man's name come out of your lips if you dare question why we were in those streets. We are in the streets because we follow the best tradition of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and so many like him. There are people who want to sanitize who Dr. King was, who want to sanitize his message. But let us be clear. He was an agitator. He was a disruptor. He wanted to disrupt the norm. Do not confuse nonviolence, which I agree with being docile. We are going to disrupt and shut down whatever we need to do until we make people understand we are fighting to uproot the same system that Dr. King was. And I say uproot because I always want to make it clear that the system is working how it was designed to work. The people who are on the bottom were supposed to be there. We don't need to change the system. We need to uproot it and replace it. We in this room are in the best tradition of this country. I get upset when I hear people saying what's happening now is not what America is. Donald Trump and his cronies are not who America are. America was founded on those values. We need to be clear about that. That is the tradition of America. But I thank the Lord that I serve that there are people in this room who have pushed back from the beginning of this country, and we are the ones who were in the street fighting for Ravi Ragbear. We are the ones who were in the street fighting for Gene. We are the ones who are fighting for the people who are called other in any country. I stand here proud because in that street with those folks was a proud, proud day. It was the closest that I felt to what must have happened when people were fighting decades ago. Nobody here was there. Nobody can say that they are those people that we celebrate. But the feeling of fear that I had and understanding that the morality of what was going on dictated that I continued to move forward within that fear. So I'm here to tell folks, some people say don't be afraid, don't be fearful. Fear is not a spirit of God. But I'm here to tell you, while that is true, I am human and so are you. So fear is a human emotion. But what we need is the courage that God has given us to move forward in that fear. And I feel the courage in this room to make sure we move forward, to make sure we get justice.
New York City Councilman Jumaane Williams among 18 people arrested after Ravi Ragbear was detained. Jumaane Williams has also announced his intentions to explore the possibility of running for lieutenant governor here in New York. When we come back, we'll be joined by the relatives of both Gene Montreville and Ravi Ragbear. And we'll speak with Gene Montreville, who has just arrived in Haiti after he was deported. Stay with us.
My skin glows in the dark, shines in the light. It's the color that holds me tight. My brown is the shade that's just for me. I'm never not missing anything but me. 'Cause I love you and I can't miss anything but you. And you're stuck on me, and all this time I'm inside you. Our time together we grow, we stretch and we show as tough as it goes, and it won't rub off of you. There's friends of similar shades of different ways who feel the same way. Don't ever forget them.
It's My Brown Skin by Helado Negro, Black Ice Cream. Singing live in our Democracy Now! Studios, he begins his national tour today. To see his full performance and interview, go to democracynow.org. This is Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we turn to look in more depth about the cases of Ravi Ragbear and Gene Montreville, two leaders of the new sanctuary movement targeted by the Trump administration. On Tuesday, yesterday, John Montreville was deported to Haiti after residing in the United States for over 3 decades. He came to the U.S. from Haiti with a green card in 1986 at the age of 17. During the height of the crack epidemic, he was convicted of possession of cocaine, sentenced to 11 years in prison. He served that time. Upon his release, he married a U.S. citizen, had 4 children, became a successful small businessman, as well as an immigrants' rights activist. He's had no further interaction with the criminal justice system. Meanwhile, another immigrant rights leader here in New York, Ravi Ragbear, is also facing deportation. He was detained last Thursday when he went to his check-in with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Ravi's detention sparked a peaceful protest that was met with police violence. Police arrested 18 people, including members of the New York City Council. Ravi Ragbear is executive director of the new Sanctuary Coalition of New York City. He's now being held in Florida and faces deportation. Well, joining us from Haiti is Gene Montreville, deported to Haiti on Tuesday. We welcome you to Democracy Now!, Gene. Are you in Port-au-Prince? Can you talk about what's happened to you since you were arrested and then detained and deported?
Good morning, Amy. Thank you so much for having me on your program again. Yes, I am. I just had my first wake up in Haiti after 32 years. And I have to tell you, it's a different feeling. Haiti has changed so much since I left. as you very well know, I was deported on Tuesday without any notification from my lawyer. They just deported me. My case was still in court. It seemed like it was something well organized between the ICE and the BIA. And they deported to Haiti, and now it was very tough. Two days of hell. They started from Monday at 7 o'clock. We didn't get here until Tuesday. I finally got out on Tuesday on 12:30. And it was tough, very, very hard. It was very hard travel. I don't know how to tell you that. It was very hard. Imagine staying up for 2 days straight with no food and shackled up and with no explanation. And now I'm in Haiti.
Can you talk about your 4 children here in the United States and talk about why you wanted to stay here?
Yes. As you know, my children, they are my life. I live for them, and now they have to suffer to the consequences that, bad choice that I made years ago. The kids, like my daughter Janaya and Josiah, I mean, they are very well-wanted kids. They're very good kids, very great kids. And, of course, they are feeling the pain, like my son, and it's really hard. It's hard on me. I'm still in shock, just being away from them now. But, they have a good mother. She's a very great woman. She's going, do her best and keep the foot running.
In fact, she is with us right now. We are joined by Janae Cawthon, who is the former wife of Jean Montreville, the mother of 3 of Jean's 4 children. Your thoughts right now as you listen to Jean, no longer here. You have fought so hard for him to stay here.
My thoughts is the system is really screwed up. They based on separating families. And to target a leader, what they didn't know is I'm the one that did all the research when Jean was first detained in 2005. And I'm going to continue to advocate for his rights and the rights of other immigrants. The way they orchestrated his deportation was well planned. And Scott Mekowitz of 26 Federal Plaza and Thomas Decker were interfering with his decision on the BIA case. They even went as far as to put down the system where you can check the status of the case. Friday, I tried to check to see if it was a decision on his case, and the system states that it was down until Monday, which is Martin Luther King Day, which was kind of funny because Martin Luther King Day is a legal holiday. So on Monday, before I went to the MLK situation that was going on at my church, Judson Memorial, I called the hotline. To my surprise, his case was denied on Friday the 12th. They made sure they did it that way so his lawyer would not be able to get a stay because it was a holiday. But what they didn't realize, his lawyer was able to put in an appeal, so he still has a pending legal case here.
So are you saying, Jean, that you were deported even as you have a pending legal appeal in the United States?
Yes. Yes. Even as my court, the BIA did not make a decision yet. And they basically called the BIA and forced the BIA to make that decision, which to me it's illegal because they're not supposed to interfere with the case. It was like Janae said, it was a well-planned, orchestrated deportation. Why I was targeted, I have no idea. All I have done is take care of my kids, go to work, and mind my business and try to stay out of trouble. I have been home for 17 years. Not one time I ever got arrested, and my kids, they need me, I need them, and now they have to pay the price for something that I did 32 years ago, And it's unbelievable that America is going to that direction now. It's very hard. My heart is broken, man. I don't know. I have no words for it, man. It's heartbroken now. Heartbroken.
Jean, can you describe how you were arrested? ICE came to your house?
Yeah, I was on my way to work. I was running late for work. I was working for New NYU Winthrop Hospital doing shuttle service. And I was supposed to be there at 2 o'clock. On my way to work, I walked on the street. I heard somebody call my name, Gene Montreville. I looked, it was 4 ICE officers came and they was like, oh, we have a warrant for your arrest. They didn't show me no warrant. They had no paperwork, nothing. So they handcuffed me, put me on the back of the car, and then took me to 26 Fido Plaza. And that same night, they sent me to New Jersey. And then the next day, they fly me to Miami. At that moment, I knew that was something that was planned. Because once you go to Miami, processing, the next step is to Haiti, even though my case was still in court.
Gene, do you feel you have been targeted because of your activism around the New Sanctuary Coalition with Ravi Ragbir? Do you feel this is why they have deported you?
Definitely. Definitely, because I've been on supervision for 15 years and I've never violated. I've always make my appointment and I stay out of trouble. All I did, I work and take care of my kids. I pay taxes every year. I did everything right. Everything they asked me to do, I have done it. So why target me now? It has to be for...
Are you sorry that you engaged in that kind of activism? Did it ever hold you back thinking, if I just be quiet, lay low, they won't deport me, they won't arrest me, as they haven't for years?
You know, when I was arrested in 2010, I met with the director of ICE, Mr. Shanahan. He did ask me to be quiet, some on that line, like slow down or blah, blah, blah. I did that. I did slow down, but I can't regret the work that we did with the sexual movement because no one knew about what ICE was doing until we started that movement. And it's a great organization, and I'm happy to be part of it. You know, but
Gene,
ICE has too much power.
Gene Montreville, is it true that I said they would not arrest you in this way, out on the street, just take you?
Yes. As long as I reported, they were not going. They even, now, till last week, yesterday, they were going, let me stay until I finish with the court system. I'm still in court now. Why I'm in Haiti? You know, so they lie, they lie, they lie. All they're giving you is lie, 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 and then just to deport you.
What has this meant for, let me ask Janae what this has meant for your children here as Gene now has been sent to Haiti after over 3 decades in the United States.
I'm going to speak about the good part first. Our son Josiah, he was very shy and laid back. This had made him into a mini activist. He put the petition out on change.org. He generated over 10,000 signatures within the first 6 days that it was posted, trying to get, people to support his dad's release. He goes to Brooklyn Tech High School, which is one of the top schools in the world. He started reaching out to his principal, his assistant principal. One of his friends' moms works for a news station. She reached out to me. She wanted to do his story. As far as Janiyah, she's a sophomore at Mercy College.
Janiyah was on our show with Gene in the studio.
She reached out to her fellow students and faculties to get them to support her dad. Janiyah just told me this morning, she said, Mommy, they gave me a shout out on the mic yesterday because of my strength. A lot of kids don't know about immigration, so I had to tell them. As far as the negative part, I try to keep them positive because they're in school, they're sad, they're missing their dad. But I told them, all of you guys have passports and you will be with your dad. You can't allow a broken system to destroy you. One day, we'll all be free. America was created on slavery. Slavery was a law. So the same way a law made them put him in deportation proceedings, because if you think about him and Ravi, they got convicted in the 80s. The law changed in the 90s. Why does that apply to them? I'm sitting here as a U.S. citizen. If I did something in the 80s, the 90s law wouldn't apply to me. So it's obvious it's racism.
Well, you mentioned Ravi, and I want to turn to Ravi Ragbir in his own words. He recorded this message on January 10th, the day before he was detained.
That was asked to me is, why have I not taken sanctuary? That was not an option for me. And the reason why that was not an option for me is because there were so many of you who have stood up for me. There's so many of you who have come out around me. I hope that you will be now motivated to stop this, and I hope and I pray that you will step out of your comfort zone to create a network of safety, not just in the houses of worship, not just in the space where we call sensitive zone, but create a network of safety around you and around the community, because you refuse to let this agency act. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, you are refusing to let them come in to your community and destroy it and take away those families only because they don't have one piece of paper. Our humanity is not dependent on a piece of paper.
Ravi Ragbir, Executive Director of the New Sanctuary Coalition of New York City, speaking last week, just a day before he was detained. Ravi's detention sparked a peaceful protest that was met with police violence. Police arrested 18 people, including members of the New York City Council. He is now being held in Florida, facing deportation. Ravi legally immigrated to the U.S. from Trinidad and Tobago more than a quarter of a century ago, but a 2001 wire fraud conviction made his green card subject to review. Even though he's married to a U.S. citizen and has a U.S.-born daughter, the government refused to normalize his status. Joining us now is Amy Gottlieb, Ravi Ragbir's wife, longtime immigrant rights activist with the American Friends Service Committee. Talk about what's happening with Ravi right now. We're speaking to Gene. He's in Haiti, speaking to us on the phone, just deported. They were both, Gene and Ravi, sent to Florida. That's where Ravi is right now?
That's right, yes.
Now, courthouse news reporter Adam Klasfeld on Tuesday, during the hearing for Ravi Ragbir, said today an assistant U.S. attorney said he didn't know why ICE detained him when they did. He was detained to effect removal, Brandon Waterman said. What we don't know is why they did it now. Can you explain?
Yeah, so we had a hearing yesterday to try to bring, well, I mean, our ultimate goal is to get Ravi released, of course, but we were trying to get him at least brought back to the New York area so that he can have access to counsel, access to his family, access to his community. We don't have to travel to Florida to see him. So there was a back and forth kind of complicated legal hearing yesterday. And the judge was really saying, you know, why on January 11th did you detain Ravi? What is your reasoning behind that? Because just like Gene, Ravi had a stay of deportation. Ravi was under an order of supervision. He had fully complied. He had not turned away. He had not tried to hide. You know, he was 100% in compliance with that order of supervision. So even the judge was saying, you know, what was it on January 11th? That Ravi actually had a stay that was valid until January 19th. So why revoke it at that moment? And they didn't answer. And, you know, really what we have to assume at this point is after Gene was picked up, that they have made a conscious decision at probably higher levels in ICE to target community activists, to target people who are really willing to come out and say that this system is tearing apart families and that this system needs to be fixed.
And what about the fact that he's been moved to Florida? Is there a chance you'll get him back here?
We're hopeful that they will bring him back, yes. We have a stay of deportation in place. The judge had initially ordered that he be detained locally, that if he's going to be detained, it has to be in the jurisdiction of New York ICE. So we're hopeful we'll get a positive decision on that from the judge today or tomorrow.
Can you explain what's taken place? We've had both Gene on Democracy Now!, also Ravi. We followed Ravi down the last time he went in for a check-in, and ultimately he was not detained then. Explain what happened this time, just as Gene described being taken on the street. Did they come to your house?
No. No. So we had some conversations with ICE previous to this, you know, hoping that they would grant a renewal of the stay application before we went in so that we didn't have to go in. They refused to do that. And up until, I think, even Wednesday, before the check-in, ICE was telling us that they had not yet made a decision on his case. They didn't know whether they were going to extend his stay or not. So we decided we're going to go in, right? We are going to go in surrounded by family, by community. There was a Jericho walk outside. There was a show of community support, and ICE knew that everybody was watching. It was a little surprising because we were asked to go to a different office inside of ICE. We were not going to the regular reporting office. We let ourselves believe that that was an okay thing, that they just kind of didn't want chaos or they didn't want a lot of people on the regular check-in room. But instead, the minute we walked in, the ICE officer allowed his lawyer, Alina Das, and me to go in with Ravi. And the minute we sat down, he basically said, this is it. This is the end of the road. We are not going to allow Ravi to stay anymore. He's exhausted all of his legal avenues. There's nothing more you're going to do. This is it. We're enforcing removal. We're taking him to custody. He is in custody now. And at that moment, Ravi, I mean, I panicked, of course. Ravi just sort of looked at me and he said, I think I'm going to pass out. And he actually did. He fainted. His eyes rolled back into his head. He fainted. ICE officers were kind of staring, and I was kind of yelling to get them water, at least. Ravi came to quickly, relatively quickly, and then they called for medical attention, which they have to do. So it was at that point that I think ICE's plans had to change a little bit because they didn't anticipate having to actually really take him out in an ambulance. But they did, and they did allow me to go in the ambulance with him. So as we were taken out, he was shackled, handcuffed. As we were taken into the ambulance, we were able to see actually the surge of protest, the surge of love that had just kind of, viscerally started as people heard that Ravi was detained. And we were prepared to let people know immediately. We had a structure set up so that if Ravi was going to be detained, we would just, say the word and everybody knew. So we felt that love. But they took us down to a hospital, and as I got out of the ambulance, they told me to get out of the ambulance. The next thing I knew, they drove Ravi away. They didn't bring him into that hospital. So from that moment, somewhere around like 10:30 in the morning, I actually had no idea where Ravi was until we learned maybe 9:30 that night after his lawyer made tons of phone calls to find out that he was taken to Miami.
Talk about the effect on your family and the effect on you right now, what this has meant as you deal with this. And you've been dealing with this not just at this point, the fear of him being detained at the previous check-in and the toll it's taken. Yeah,
it's a huge toll. It's devastating. I mean, we have been living with this. We've been living with this weight on our shoulders, with this fear that this could happen. But honestly, I still believe in the system, and I still believe that community support and the outpouring of love that we felt is going to make a difference in this. And so on one level, going home to an empty house at night, seeing Ravi's things, feeling his presence everywhere in our home, I cry myself to sleep. I'm there, I'm torn apart. I've got an amazing, amazing support network of friends and family who are caring for me, being there for me, bringing me food, making sure I'm okay regularly, constantly. But then there's also this piece of me that is just devastated that this is how our government treats people. That, as an immigrant rights activist for more than 20 years, I've known this abstractly. I've seen it. I've seen families suffer. I've fought against the system of immigration detention. But to see my husband snatched away from me and disappeared for, I actually had no idea where he was. I heard from him Friday morning at 6 a.m.
And you're an immigrants' rights lawyer.
That's right. So I know the system, but still to have my husband disappeared, to have ICE not communicating with the lawyer or me to tell us where he is. They actually on Friday took him in a van outside of the Chrome Detention Center. He didn't know where he was going. I had no idea where he was all day Friday also. And when I finally went down to see him, fly to Miami to see my husband, I get a 1-hour visit through plexiglass, right? So it's extraordinary the impact that it has on a person, on relationships, and I'm still sort of just, barely walking through this.
I want to turn to part of the interview we did with Ravi Ragbir last year. We'll go to that clip in a minute, Ravi, in our studio here. Let's go to
powers
that.
where I need to be. You know, I need to be always aware that even though I may have support, I have to think about those who do not have support. So I always have to be ready to think about the consequences of a policy change on someone who do not have that support. But you know what you saw yesterday is those immigrants who says I've been a role model for them, so that they are now speaking up, and they are now empowered to go out and speak to the elected officials and go out and advocate for themselves. And go out, even though something may go wrong, they know that as they go through this process, it will be good for them because they are ready for every step of the way. So I do not want to be a role model, but I have been told I am.
That's Ravi Ragbir in our studio last year with Amy Gottlieb, his wife, who also is an immigrants' rights attorney. Do you think he and Jean have been targeted? Why now? Why have they been taken after both of them have been in this country for well over, a quarter of a century and more than 30 years?
That's the only conclusion we can draw, that they've been targeted. We've been hearing about people being targeted around the country now. And it's mystifying why suddenly that, you know, Ravi also still has a legal case. Like, nothing has changed in Ravi's case since the last check-in in March, right? We are still in the same legal posture. He's got a case pending, and we're hopeful that that case is going to take away the grounds of deportability. So there's no doubt that both Ravi and Jean, or Ravi especially more recently, has really been speaking out, has been educating communities, has been leading an accompaniment program so that people are witnessing how ICE is treating immigrants.
I want to turn to an interview I did this weekend in Colorado, in Carbondale, with Sandra Lopez, who has taken sanctuary in Colorado. She's a Mexican mother of 3 U.S. citizen children. She's taken sanctuary to avoid being deported to Mexico. Last weekend, I went to the Episcopal parsonage in Carbondale. We had a long conversation, and we're going to play that in the coming days. But I asked her about the news that ICE agents had just arrested the husband of another woman who had taken sanctuary, Ingrid LaTorre, a Colorado immigrant rights leader who has sought sanctuary to avoid her deportation. Ingrid's husband, Alicio, was arrested Thursday, the same day Ravi Ragbir was detained here in New York City. This is Sandra Lopez.
Being a leader isn't easy, and they want to try and separate us and prevent us from working together. But we talk a lot. I'm extremely angry about what happened to Eliseo, Ingrid's husband. It has affected me a lot. It's affected me as a mother, as thinking about myself as a wife and a friend to Ingrid, and I see this as an attack on sanctuary. And I want Ingrid to know that she's not alone. We're here. We're angry, and we're supporting her. We're supporting Eliseo. They're doing this to try and weaken us. They want to frighten us and divide us, but no, we need to be astute. We need to be organized. We need to leave behind the fear and the shadows and continue raising our voices. There's a quote that divided we fall. We're going to stay strong and united, and we're going to continue defending our dignity and defending sanctuary.
So that is Sandra Lopez in the Episcopal parsonage in Carbondale, there for 3 months with her 2-year-old, Areli. And she is saying, I want Ingrid, another woman who has taken sanctuary, to know she is not alone, because Eliseo, Ingrid's husband, was surrounded by ICE agents and taken. And that was on the same day that Ravi Ragbir here in New York was taken. I want to get a final comment from both of you before we go to Seattle to speak with Maru Moro Villalpando, who we've spoken to numerous times, a well-known immigrants' rights leader, who herself is now fearful that she is going into deportation hearings. Your final comments, Amy.
I say we need to fight this. We need to continue fighting. What we have seen since Ravi was detained, since Jean was deported or detained and then deported, and since all these other cases are popping up, that the community support is coming out and that it is making people stronger, more united. As Sandra said, we are coming together and we are going to fight this. This attempt by ICE to knock us down, to put us away, is not going to be successful. We are going to continue moving this, and we've got Janae, and we've got Mauro. We've got a ton of people on this who are going to make it happen. And
Jean Montreville, you're still on the phone with us from Haiti. I'm wondering, in this final moment we have with you, if you could comment on the reports that President Trump talked about Haiti, as he did African countries and El Salvador, as, well, I won't say the word that he used, as S-hole countries, curse-hole countries. Do you think that has something to do with why you're back in Haiti today? His attitude toward Haiti, which he said reportedly in the New York Times just weeks ago, talked about everyone in Haiti having AIDS and not wanting people from your country in ours.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I got here, the officials of Haiti who received us, that was the first statement he said. He said that what Trump said about Haiti was unacceptable. It was racist and so forth. We did get a good reception from the Haitian government. I have to say that they treated us fairly. It was a long process, but it was fair. And they're upset about Trump. And that coming from an official of Haiti is one of the secretaries of the GCS, and they do not like that.
And let me end with Janae here, Janae Kaufman, after President Trump reportedly called the country where Jean was born, S-hole countries, talking about not wanting people from Haiti in the United States, right at this time that, that Jean has been deported.
Number 45, he's very ignorant. So I didn't even entertain that comment. I just look at his actions. Every time he opens his mouth, everything Obama did, he tried to undo. He's in the front page of the Daily News today. His alleged mistress, a porn star, came out. She says she tried to come out a couple of years ago, but the Times refused to share her story. His wife, she can never compare to Michelle Obama. If Michelle Obama was caught in bed with other women and doing the things she did, she would be impeached immediately. So that's all I'm going to say. Number 45 has a lot to do with this whole situation, and hopefully one day he'll be impeached.
Well, we're going to leave it there. Janae Kaufman, the former wife of Jean Montreville, mother of 3 of Jean's 4 children. Jean Montreville joining us directly from Haiti, where he has been deported to just yesterday. And Amy Gottlieb, the wife of Ravi Ragbir, who's now in detention in Florida in deportation proceedings. They're trying to get him back to New York and have him released to where he has lived for well over 2 decades. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, we go to Seattle, Washington, to speak with another well-known immigrants' rights activist who herself faces detention and deportation. Stay with us.
Will you cast me to the wayside? Well, I feel the feeling of high-painted ceilings, reveal the covering of a blank sky.
Doomed Moses Sumney. This is Democracy Now! We end today's show with undocumented activist Mara Mora Villalpando. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement have placed her in deportations proceedings in a move she calls retaliation for political activism. Mara is a nationally known immigrant rights activist who leads the organization Northwest Detention Center Resistance. She's engaged in multiple acts of civil disobedience to protest deportations and immigrant detentions of others. She says only days before Christmas she received a notice to appear. We go now to Seattle to talk with Mara Mora Villalpando. Welcome back to Democracy Now! What message did you get from ICE, Mara?
Good morning, Amy. I received a certified mail letter to my house, which is called Notice to Appear, that lists my name and the fact that I overstayed a visa, my last entrance to the United States in 1996. and it says that they're beginning deportation proceedings against me. The initial part of the letter is that it doesn't have a date for a hearing, and just the fact that I got it to my house. I don't have any bills to my name. I've never had interactions with ICE that would lead to my deportation proceedings. I never had any interactions with police that would later involve ICE. So altogether, it's very strange.
Why do you think this is happening now, Maru?
Well, I mean, we've been saying this since the end of the Obama era. We have a deportation machine that has grown incredibly big. And when he was leaving, he had the opportunity to stop it, but instead gave the keys to this fascist regime that has utilized it in so many different ways. For us, it's clear that although their actions against immigrants, starting with their campaign, actually hitting Mexicans, has grown, but we still fight, we still resist, and we have been winning. So we believe that ICE is really sending us a message to stop our political activity, to stop our activism. When I saw that letter, I immediately knew what it was, and I laughed to myself because I felt they're sending me a message. They want me to stop, and I want to stop.
Talk about when you came out as undocumented in 2014, what happened and how you feel this connects to then. That was during the Obama administration.
That's right. Back in February of 2014, we did our first shutdown action in Tacoma, Washington, to bring attention to this horrible detention center, like so many others, too many around the nation. And it was part of this No One More campaign at the time that was precisely having people, undocumented people, bringing attention and also putting ourselves on the line, saying if the system doesn't stop, we will stop it. So it's clearly a connection that the system doesn't want us to continue fighting, and they're doing everything they can to stop us. We believe that ICE was created with a specific intention. It's not only to deport people, it's to destroy people. They are destroying our families, and now they're becoming into a full circle to be part of the police regime. We think ICE is nothing but a political oppression apparatus. They're Trump's police now.
We've had you on, we've had your daughter on, Maru. What are your plans now?
We are going to continue fighting. My daughter and I, she was with me when I received the letter. She actually opened the letter. She was really angry. She said, I can't believe there's people around that they don't want to understand this is happening and how this is becoming a nightmare. But we decided to fight back. We decided we're not going to hide. We're not going to be afraid because that's what the system wants. That's what ICE wants us to do. And instead, we're going to fight back.
And do you have a time that you have to, quote, check in?
We haven't received anything. As a matter of fact, my lawyer requested a form which ICE has to submit to the court, to the immigration court, saying why they want me to go to a court hearing and why it might be in place in deportation proceedings. ICE denied that letter, and my lawyer had to submit a Freedom of Information Act. And as of now, when I call the system on the phone, there's nothing about my case. There's no hearing date yet.
Finally, I mean, you have lived in this country for, again, over a quarter of a century. Do you see a connection between your case and the two cases we've just looked at? Jean Montreville, who's just been deported to Haiti yesterday, and Ravi Ragbir, who's in detention and deportation proceedings in Florida from New York, both immigrant leaders.
Absolutely, absolutely. We believe this is a clear targeting of people that have there to not only question the system, but to fight the system, that we are spoken, that we are public about it, that we're not afraid. And it's obviously clear that they're going after us right now. They will go after many others, not only undocumented, but documented, and even possibly U.S. citizens. Remember, Department of Justice saying they're going to review, along with Homeland Security, 150,000 records of U.S. citizens naturalized, thinking that they're going to revoke some of those citizenships.
Maru Villapando, I want to thank you for being with us. That does it for our show, speaking to us from Seattle.